Okay, see? It's a warm night.
Sorry, we're late. We had to inhale dinner.
Muting.
Wow, that fan sounds very loud. But it's the weakest setting.
Anyone currently watching, if you can hear the roaring fan, please let us know so we can kill it.
This is not directly connected, like in the path of
Hey,
the mic.
Pico.
So-
Hey, Andre. Hey, Jay. So do you guys hear the roaring fan?
Yeah, is the sound annoying? Let us know.
Catan ba? Okay, assume ba is the sheep. Ba.
Yes.
Okay, making sure. It's okay on their end according to them.
Okay.
I guess it's not blowing on the mic. So.
Yeah. So it should be okay. Pico can only hear sheep. I don't know if that's still Catan, Pico. Maybe it's just, you.
Oh my god, I hate this new iOS. It's like all my previous commands don't work the way they used to.
Well, I feel that way about I stumbled into Google Analytics' new version at work today. Like, what? Wait, everything's changed. Where are my views?
Why is my nose so itchy again?
Okay, why do you have to ask? It always is.
Maybe it's allergy to the light.
Hey, Kenny, it's okay. We're late too.
See? Look at that. I'm like super scratching my nose on the screen.
The view counts are like super off. Like, I mean, there's so many people commenting, but then it's like saying we only have 2 people watching.
Yeah, I know. Something's wrong again. Well, that's okay.
Yeah. I think we might as well like just roll out.
So shall we start? We did start late, so we might as well start.
Yeah.
This is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, our little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
This is completely unscripted, not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us, we talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for joining us again. We're on the 97th episode. 97. Oh my gosh.
We're super obliged to do an episode today, tomorrow, and Thursday, so that Friday is episode 100. Math. Okay.
But our 97th episode. Wait, we're doing an episode on Wednesday?
No, I said tomorrow.
Okay, making sure. Our episode today is all about
Catan,
which used to be
Settlers of Catan.
yes.
So, but yeah, they shortened their name for some reason. And then Catan is really like one of those things that we cite as like one of the pillars, one of the classics already in modern board games. Because it's just one of those things. It's like it's right up there with Carcassonne. It's one of those games that you just have to play.
Released in 1995, Catan was one of the games that was part of, you could say, the new wave of board games. From a world that used to know nothing but games of the generals, chess, Monopoly, Snakes and Ladders, which isn't a game, and other similar games like Sorry.
That's Toby's like, that meme about the guy in the booth, like, it's a statement and then change my mind. That's Toby's statement. Snakes and Ladders is not a game.
But yeah, Settlers of Catan, which is now known also simply as Catan, was one of the games that heralded this new way to experience board games.
And it's funny because it's a European game, but it's not quite a Euro game, only because there's a dice mechanic at the center. But, I mean, there's still victory points and stuff. So, Catan was created.
So notice our box is not Catan.
Yeah, it's still Settlers. Was designed by Klaus Teuber, EU is pronounced oi in German.
Oi.
That's over. The core game is only good for up to 4 players. And you can tell the sort of archaic age of Settlers of Catan, given that the game and its initial expansions were all released as 4-player games, and then they added on 5 to 6 player add-on expansions just so that you can expand your player count.
Oh, I can't show it.
Yeah, but in essence, it captures the challenge of how games are like optimal at 4 players, and then it's hard to get beyond the new ones.
So, in brief, what is Catan? Catan is a game wherein you and other players are settlers attempting to score victory points. And by being the first one to score the target number of victory points, you win the game. You score these points by either expanding your settlements, upgrading settlements into cities, buying cards that give you points directly,
building roads,
and accomplishing the other tasks like having the longest road or the largest army.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the challenge is that you have a variable map, which is arranged in that beautiful pattern of hexagons.
And it helps reinforce many board game players' love for hexagons and hexagon tiles.
By rolling 2 dice, the numbers that are rolled generate resources in specific tiles. And if you happen to have a settlement or city in one of the junction points on that tile,
the vertices,
there you go, thank you. Then you actually earn resources. There are different resources in the game, which is wood, stone, clay, and sheep.
Or wool, but we just say sheep.
We like sheep. And by using these resources, you are able to build roads, settlements, upgrade them to cities, and other similar actions.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the challenge of the game is managing your hand, because at any time that you have more than 7 cards, and someone happens to roll a 7, that triggers the thief. And
the robber.
A robber. And everyone with cards more than 7 must lose half of them.
Yeah, that's a pain. And it just goes back to the discard, buy cards.
Mm-hmm.
So you really can't hoard resources for long. And especially since a lot of the costs, like the cost for building a settlement or to upgrade to a city are typically about 5 cards.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have that sort of like pandemic problem of, I have a hand of 7, but I need 5 cards to do awesome stuff. So how do I gather the right combination of resources with a limited hand size and an aggressive robber that is supposed to come out at the most common dice combination between 2 d6s, which is 7.
The game is meant for 2 to 4 players competitively, because yes, there are worldwide tournaments for Catan. You will have different player counts as well. But at the most basic level, it's a 4-player game. Later expansions, which are smaller box expansions, allow you to have a 5th player. But the game shines when you consider the other expansions that add all the more to it.
Yeah.
One of the ones we have is
the Seafarers. Well, notice it's already Catan, but the box style is still old.
Seafarers allows your variable map to have a larger scope and exploration area.
And now you can build boats.
Even more interestingly, Seafarers offers optional, I guess it's modes or modules.
Yeah, they're like different scenarios of how to
to
make the islands and arrange them in different
So
ways.
like there's one wherein the islands are covered in fog. So until you get there, you don't turn it over and you don't see what's available. There's others wherein there are special tiles that represent key or specific resources that you can try to grab. But the beauty of Seafarers is that it then allows also separate islands. And there's a certain joy in gaining control of an island, having your city there and knowing no one else can land there.
Okay, we gotta warn everyone that we do not have a complete set of all the expansions. Mainly because as the editions have changed, I have been irritated in buying the new versions of expansions that don't match the style of our boxes.
Yes.
So what's the other expansion that we have?
So here's the example of a 5th and 6th player expansion.
Yeah.
In this case, it's the Seafarers expansion. We actually do have a fifth and sixth player for the base game, but
But
it's already mixed.
We
in.
already integrated it into the base
So
box.
notice they do sell it separately. So that's the basic expected ones. Other expansions include cities and knights, which introduces the element of having to prepare for the coming of the barbarians and protecting your settlements from these roving parties, which was greatly used. Well, it was used to great effect in the rebranding, no, the reskin of the game for Game of Thrones.
Ah, yeah, that's true. When they had the whole wall aspect. Okay. Wow, there's a Fisherman of Catan. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
We're looking at the list of expansions, and the list of expansions on Board Game Geek is like 10 pages long because it includes all the German variants.
So some of the expansions we do own include
the Crop Trust, which is like to commemorate the seed bank. We have not actually played. Look, it's still in plastic. But yeah, and then Legend of the Sea Robbers is a scenario pack, so specifically for Seafarers. So it's a campaign. So they've been experimenting a lot. And and can you open up the base box?
Yes. We also have expansions that do not have their own box. So we keep them in really sad-looking bags.
Well, but there is, for a purpose of now, there's the Frenemies of Catan.
The Frenemies allows you to gain bonuses whenever you hit your frenemy, but you can also gain bonuses when you work together.
There's the Helpers of Catan, which is like essential because the Helpers of Catan gives you those helper characters, which is the same as something in Star Trek Catan, and we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah. There's the other expansion, which is the Oil Springs, which has to do with the finding of oil in certain lands, and this introduces the element of pollution, having to find ways to make sure you don't overdevelop the places.
So it's all these little more tokens to add to the game. The pro and con of Catan is that, so these hex tiles, very thin. Very, very thin. And one of the greatest problems of all Catan games is how to keep the board stable. Because all it takes is someone building his road aggressively, and that everything will shift. Electric fans have been known to blow these tiles. They are really not that thick. There are different people who have tried to come up with like holders for it. I backed the Kickstarter for one, but the Kickstarter failed fabulously and I never got anything. So it's been tricky. And then there are like really pretty custom versions of Catan. Some people really love it and have made like all wooden versions with beautiful
or 3D printed tokens.
Yeah, but again, it doesn't work well with like the options for expansions. So, and this is just like the main franchise of Catan. So we did mention, like, for example, there is a Game of Thrones themed Catan, which includes a giant wall and a mechanic similar to what was in Cities and Knights in that whole defense aspect.
There is a Catan that has a great river, almost similar to Carcassonne. There's Catan that introduces as well, or re-implements things with a more generic space theme, or I think that was Starfarers, which is a huge box because it has all these giant minis.
Yeah, was there a Star Wars?
There was also no, Star Wars was Carcassonne, I believe.
Okay, just Carcassonne. Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, did we miss anything?
Yeah. But this is the one we liked in terms of re-implementation.
Okay, Star Trek Catan is a classic, and this is like TOS Star Trek. So what's nice about Star Trek Catan is that it actually already integrated the mini expansion known as the Helpers of Catan. In this case, it is represented by the 7 members of the primary bridge crew of the original Enterprise. So it's Kirk, it's Spock, it's McCoy, it's Chekhov, Uhura, Nurse Chapel, and gosh, Sulu. Yeah.
So you'll notice instead of cities, you have space stations. Instead of roads, you have starships because they represent
fleets,
the star routes.
Yeah.
That you could take in order to travel here and there. Instead of land areas, you have planets, and then even the resources were renamed.
Dilithium, and it's just hard though. I mean, the resources part, everybody's like, I need a green. It's like I need a green and a purple. So It's quirky that way.
Yeah. In many instances, people might have encountered Star Trek Catan because many liked it in the earlier years because of the friends.
Yeah, because the Helpers of Catan was
did
like
not
a
come
German-only
Mhm.
mini expansion. So a lot of us in the non-German speaking countries did not have access to the Helpers.
Can you say that in German?
I'm not sure what the word of help is. I have to look it up.
Yeah. So that's Star Trek Catan, which basically is a reskin. But if you want something more than just a reskin,
Okay, it's still the same game engine is still like a reskinned one, but the Federation map, a Federation space map for Star Trek Catan,
It's a
gives
preset
you
map.
a preset map based on that one funny image of the map of known space in Kirk's private quarters in TOS. And they simulate. Oh my gosh, it's super dusty.
yes, it is.
So they super simulated the Federation space. So it's not like the most balanced map, they say, because the resources try to match coloring and styling of the show. But it's quite cool to like be playing in like known locations. Ooh.
Yeah, it's hard. It's big.
Yeah, so just for reference, then it's like, look, it's Janus from, that episode. And then things like Alpha Serene is here, the first Federation here. So there's literally the Dyson sphere.
What's
You
that
can't
thing?
see.
What's
I'm
that
just
thing in
pointing.
the upper rightmost corner? The one nearest to you.
Upper rightmost? They're just small planets. And then this
Okay.
is like a star base. So
And then near my head. The one up there.
Fabrina the Patriarchy, it's a star base. And then
This
all
one.
these
What's
things.
this?
I think it's just the logo. I'm not sure. I have to double check. So we haven't actually played this Federation map. I feel sad because it's always looking like I guess for maximum effect, it would make more sense to play it with people who know TOS, Star Trek the original series. Yeah, and then there's all these additional things. I think it's just resource tracks, right?
I think it was point trackers.
Yeah. So, admittedly, Star Trek Catan in itself is like a super solid Catan experience. Your only challenge is that it is forever fixed at up to 4 players. There is no 5 to 6 player expansion for Star Trek Catan.
Mhm.
So that's a bit of a pain. Like, because I know a lot of friends who like playing Star Trek Catan, but then you want to play in a larger game. Sorry, there is no option. You got to go back to regular Catan.
Mhm.
McCoy is here, and of course, is complaining. It's a resource game. Yes, it's totally a resource game.
Makoy, you have to realize almost 80% to 90% of the games out there are resources.
You must accept
because
the
there are very
resourceness.
few games that do not have any resources whatsoever. I think what you just hate is multiple resources.
And this has 4. So that's like our overview. But then, so do we talk to what do you like most about Catan?
So Catan is interesting in the sense that because there is a chance dice element, even if you're playing with seasoned players, you can still sort of have a bigger chance of winning compared to other games. That's assuming, however, that you were able to grab the best positions on the map. When the map is generated with a random spread of which land tiles are there and which numbers correspond to which tile, and keep in mind the numbers do determine when you generate resources.
Yeah, so like I don't know if you're going to be excited about sitting on a 12 because how often does a 12 come up on
and
2d6?
And each time you're in a vertex, you have 3 possible numbers around you, given the other land tiles. So if you were somewhere with an 8, a 6, and a 4, for example,
Ooh.
then you have a bigger chance of generating resources compared to someone who has a 2, a 12, and an 11.
But that assumes like, you didn't get one of those edge cities,
Mhm.
edge places where you're connecting to the water only because you want a port because there are special trading bonuses
And
there.
ports are very important when you realize you'll have trouble getting the resources you need. So if you can, for example, it's one of the strategies, let's say you see a port that allows you to trade 2 wood for 1 enemy, and then you were able to monopolize and land on the wood locations, then you're still going to have a great time, even if you don't expand on the other locations.
Yeah. So and that gets us to some of the quirks of this game. Is that one? What's this? trading. Okay. Trading is tricky because I mean, and the way we play it, we always go back to the rules and constantly remind people: you trade with others first, then you trade with your harbor, your ports, and then that's it. Then you purchase.
In terms of the hard fast rules, trading is also supposed to be one-sided, meaning if it was my turn and I had wood to spare, I might say, okay, I'm giving away wood. Who wants stone? And then Rocky says, I can get, I'll get wood. I have stone. Another player can't say, can I offer clay instead? Because that will slow down the game.
Yeah, there's that weird, like, you're not supposed to negotiate. So when you're making a trade, you're actually making an offer, and then someone has to take the offer.
Or not.
There's not much room for negotiation.
And while that's a written rule, many don't really follow it. Many have a lot of back and forth, which can be fun.
But it stretches the game a lot for an already lengthy game. Because you're trying to get to, 15 points? It takes a while. This is not like the 15 points of Splendor, because especially when you're just eking out, like, building long roads and stuff. So there's that. Then there's the whole dice element. So there are people who are uncomfortable with the randomness of the dice. In fact, it is often joked that Catan dice do not follow normal distribution.
Yes. As strange as it sounds, we have had games where 6 was only rolled once.
And then the 12s and 2s keep coming up.
And like in sequence, parang second time we're rolling 12 again.
So it's weird. So there is an option.
Yeah, there is an alternative deck of cards that allows you to use the deck instead. So it sort of makes the distribution of resource production a little bit more equal. But at the same time, it kind of does make you wonder, what's the point then of the special numbers if it's going to work that way?
Yeah. So we don't have a copy of the alternate card thing. We thought about it every now and then. And as much as Toby dislikes dice games, we still play Catan that way. But it is definitely one of those games that really inspired the principle of telling people the goal of this game is to beat Toby.
Yeah, so GM shares, rambulan ng trading sa amin, maraming out of turn na nagpaparinig. Yeah, because it is a fun thing. It's a fun thing to do. But it can...
Depending on the group, it can be distracting, it can be disruptive.
Or worse, for the players who are on the losing end,
or newer to the game,
they might feel it's not fair. Because like all of these things are happening and no one's trading with me, that's why I'm losing. And that's part of why we kind of like sticking to the rules. So that way, if you are losing, you at least feel like everyone's playing fair and no one's playing favorites or no one's, capitalizing on things. GM also shared Star Trek Catan was the first version he played.
Oh, see, that's cool. And then I think there's a lot of friends we introduced Catan that way. Like we played Star Trek Catan first. Plus the models are so cute. I mean, it's nice to have little like Constitution class ships just marching along in like shadow form.
And the upgrade, right? There was that base, but then you put that thing on.
Oh yeah, when you upgrade a star base, it's so good from an outpost to a star base. Yeah. It's so cool. Okay, so other quirks is that there's a main rule where you cannot build a settlement with right next to another settlement.
There has
so
to
it's
be
always
a one space rule.
One space. So there's like one vertex between you and the other one. So around the hexagon, optimally, you can have 3 settlements.
And that's where some players can be viciously cruel by making sure they position their settlement to block off future building in that location.
Yeah, so sometimes then you'll see a lot of tiles with only 2 settlements around it.
Or you'll have people who capitalize on roads so that they can cut off the progress of other players. It just happens.
Toby in our early games of Catan painfully taught me the principle of aggressive road building, because his goal is to like block off half the map as soon as possible. Before there was a Game of Thrones expansion, Toby was building the wall. Okay?
And it would be like opposite ends of the map. So the whole island will be half, or all the other players on one half, and then me with the rest of the
And
island.
it typically is the part of the map that has at least 2 clay spots, which just further fuels his road building ambition.
And people will stop trading with me. So I will just make the roads longer.
And head to the port and start trading with the port. So there. So that's like, so I know that by the time we've played with like other friends, I feel like Toby and I are a little aggressive playing Catan. You really see our roads trying to cut each other off. It's like, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. My road's going to come. It's not even aiming for longest road. It is strategic road. It's basically colonizing and like, do not cross this line. I live here.
No.
Because you can't build a settlement if it's not connected to the road.
Yes.
No, your road.
And then you can't upgrade something to a city unless you have the settlement available.
Yes.
There is the monopoly rule, as we call it, which is
do other people call it that? I
have to check the manual. I think it was also mentioned in the manual, similar to monopoly.
Yeah, but because that's where I first encountered. So do explain.
So you basically are not allowed to build something if you don't have the token left.
Yeah, so you start the game with a preset number of roads, settlements, and cities.
And let's say if you've been building settlements and you spread out nicely and have multiple settlements and you have enough resources to build another settlement.
If you're out of tokens, it's not going to happen. Hence monopoly rule. Because again, if you look at the official rules of monopoly, if you're going to buy a house and there are no houses in the box, the manual states you cannot buy a house. That's why we call it the monopoly rule.
The rule gets tricky, painful when it's the race for the longest road. Because then whoever uses up all the road tokens first will now forever be the longest road.
Yes, because to get longest road, you must be one segment longer than the previous longest road.
And even if someone matches your number,
that's not enough.
They will not affect you.
It's it's like the world of fashion. You gotta win. You can't tie. Pret a porter.
So you might think that once you're cut off, there's no way of winning. Surprisingly, there have been still instances wherein a player won with just a city and a settlement, while the rest had multiple. Because of the development.
Yeah, so to be fair, I think that's the joy of Catan. Like there is not only one way to win, definitely. It's tricky. There are like different play styles, and you may need to pivot mid-game. Like if you see that the roads have locked you up, what are you gonna do? Or you keep generating sheep. What am I gonna do with all these sheep?
Yes.
You're most likely going to go with development cards.
And then development cards add the added advantage of instant points if you find them. Armies that allow you to move the knights that allow you to move the robber around in order to steal cards from other players.
And there's an achievement for largest army, which is the most knights played.
And then lastly, the actual development cards, which either give you amazing power, such as Monopoly. Everyone, give me your wood. Or others wherein you immediately build
cornucopia.
You have instant 2 resources of your choice, which is cornucopia, or I think that was Horn of Plenty.
Horn of Plenty, but the picture's a cornucopia.
And stuff like that. So it's an interesting mix of tactics and strategies that you can adapt to. And part of the fun of the game is knowing everyone wants something. So let's say they all need clay and you're the only one with clay. And on your turn, you go, throwing away 4 clay for 1 wood.
That's just terrible. That's just rude. And then there's really also the resource spread is kind of crazy. I mean, like, and then especially, I mean, the first few times you play Catan, you're probably going to play with the preset arrangement, and that's fine. That's like the balanced arrangement. Everybody has a chance. But the real fun of Catan is when you start doing random layout.
Yes.
And the map is crazy. And then you'll see suddenly all the clay is in one area. And everybody's rushing to build a settlement
because
there.
Part of the way it works is after the map has been generated,
then you sprinkle the numbers.
Players then take turns choosing their initial positioning.
Yes.
And that initial positioning is huge because you can then corner a spot with the great numbers or corner a spot with the resources you want. But you don't start with those resources.
Yes, it's only in the second round of placements that you start to get resources, and that is done in reverse order.
Yes. So if it's invisible player Toby, then Rocky in terms of placing first, second, and third settlement, the next round then starts with Rocky, then me, then invisible player.
Yeah.
Which means if Rocky already positioned himself in a way that he can lock me out, then he can make sure his second settlement gives him the wood and clay he needs So on the very moment his turn starts, block it out.
I have done this. I often try to do this. I am happiest when I am middle player. I may be last to choose first spot, but then it's 2 consecutive moves during settlement placement. So it's like, yes, I like this. I like this. Yeah, and then of course the inevitable jokes about wood for sheep, because people have wood for sheep. People have wood for many things. So
yeah,
yes. Catan, admittedly, we don't play it as much as we'd like to. In fact, I haven't even scanned these boxes, so please don't put them away right away. I want to scan the boxes.
And there are some stuff we still did pull up.
Yeah, I mean, like, so one is that we haven't finished getting all the expansions because we're trying to get them in this style, which is unlikely because the ones now all look like our copy of Crop Trust, which is like this giant rectangular portrait-oriented box instead of horizontal. They used to be all over in hubs, but then they're just gone now.
If you do end up getting into Catan, know that there are a lot of peripheral items on sale. Everything from something that reinforces the board so things don't get pushed out of place, to starting player modules that allow you to have everything laid out nicely and ready for use.
Additional cards.
Yeah. There's extra cards for the resources in case you lost a few. There's specific expansions you can find in smaller containers. A lot of expansions will be hard to notice if you're in a shop because they're literally one single sheet that's vacuum sealed.
Yeah, so the oil springs, the helpers, the frenemies, these were all like, it's basically the punch board with one sheet of a manual.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Because the expansions rarely have any wooden tokens.
Yeah, they've never really added except for like the boxes.
Yeah.
So that's the nature of Catan so far. And then they've been trying to branch out in new re-implementations, which I thought was interesting. And like things like the Crop Trust just feels so weird. I know they wanted to support the seed bank, but then suddenly it's a modern setting connecting to the rest of the game.
There are expansions of Catan that are specific regions or areas in the world.
Yeah.
So there's a Catan expansion that's all about the gold rush. There's an expansion that's all about the spreading of the settlements and the stealing of Native American land, and stuff like that. So you might want to look those up as well if you want to see the different flavors of Catan. I think in our case, we liked doing that more for Concordia than Catan.
Yeah. So because it's a tile map and like typically you want the randomness for full like innovative play. So admittedly, I think our collection largely reflects our opinions of like which direction to go for this game. If you don't expect to play a lot of large games and you like Star Trek, then Star Trek Catan is a solid purchase. That's like, it's it. That's like maybe the only Catan you need. Beyond that, if you're playing the main Catan, obviously you have to get the main settlers. You have to get your 5 to 6 expansions.
If you feel you'll reach 5 and 6 players. Because admittedly,
it super slows down.
A 4-player game is the sweet spot. 5 and 6 does work, but man, waiting 5 turns before your turn comes up, you will most likely, get your stuff stolen by the robber.
Oh, and then, aside, minimum player count is 3. This is a game we have not played in quarantine together because obviously we need a 3rd player. I wonder if there's automata runes, but that would be weird.
Yeah, there probably are.
Okay, then Seafarers, I think, among all the expansions, adds such a drastic change to the game with the whole crossing the water, and then there are now islands.
A large part of what Seafarers did was make you think about, do I lock people out with the roads or do I cut them off from reaching other islands?
But it's harder to cut off entirely because now, like, if you're blocked on the island, I can always make an island, a sea route to get to that spot.
If you have enough pieces.
Yeah, if you have enough boats. So it's a consideration. Seafarers is still pretty solid. And then I think, and this mainly reflects me as a Star Trek Catan player, I can't live without helpers. The helpers of Catan, or otherwise the bridge officers of Star Trek Catan, I think always feel like it helps balance out bad dice luck. Like, because it gives you a lot of them. You can give you bonuses even though you don't generate a resource. Like I always call it Spock, but right when you have Spock, then you'll always get a free resource when you don't get a resource from the die. Or if you have Uhura, it's a more beneficial trade, right? That the people have to take. So things like that.
Because Catan, given it's an older game, does suffer. Ooh, I moved the box to show my face.
Yes.
Does suffer from the possible sadness of you having turns you do nothing.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Since resources are randomly awarded, and then resources can be stolen, it's possible that, for example, on the first turn after yours, you generate, let's say, 4 wood. So you now have 4 cards. On the second turn, another player does something and you generate, let's say, 3 stone. So you now have 7 cards. And on the third player's turn, they do something and you generate 4 more cards. You now have 11 cards. Then they use this card that steals 1 from you. And then on your turn, the thief happens and you lose half the cards you have.
And your name is Toby.
So it can be painful that way. Friends allows that to be slightly alleviated because it allows you to do stuff even on your turn when you don't have the resources you need.
But yeah, that's Catan for you.
Mhm.
And we hope you enjoyed our little impromptu overview. We don't have a full collection, but we're happy that we have it. We'll definitely want to play it again. Yeah, any last things on Catan?
Don't be afraid to trade, but pay attention to what they need.
Yeah.
So you don't trade them the winning moment.
Or there's a degree of card counting and making sure if you need clay, pay attention who's been generating clay.
Yes.
Okay.
But other than that, that's more than 30 minutes. We had a lot of fun and we hope you'll join us again next time.
Yeah, if you have questions or suggestions for future Baduy Pride episodes, fill up the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. Episode 100 is coming up on Friday. We still have no idea what we're going to do. If you have suggestions, let us know. You can follow us on Twitter, Toby No Shade, or Sunigo.
You can also check out our blog, that's baduypride.com, for all the previous stuff, previous episodes and stuff about us.
Yeah, that works too. All right. And then, of course, feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below. Have you played Catan? Which Catan variant is your favorite? And why are you obsessed with sheep and wood? You gotta let us know. And be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky.
I'm Toby.
You really have wanted to carry the boxes. Huh? Okay, and this is Baduy Pride. Are you okay?
Yes.
Do I end the episode? I can just let you lift it some more. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.